This is Resonance 104.4 FM. As always, flipping marvellous. I'm Nick Hennegan, and welcome to another slice of Literary London, where we're going to celebrate once more literary birthdays. A couple of weird and wonderful people. We're going to be talking about Jemima Pubbleduck. Yep. But we're also going to be celebrating the literary birthday on 26th of July, 1894, of one Aldous Huxley. And again, I've managed to find some recordings of him talking about literature and a little bit about life, which I shall play you as well. And also, just to remind you, this is our final show, depending on when you're listening to this, of course, of this season. We're not on Resonance FM during August, but I shall be around on bohemianbritain.com. And let me just mention this. I think I mentioned it last week. If you're a writer and you're going to the Edinburgh Fringe, then do please get in touch, because we're going to be running the Edinburgh, not London, literary pub crawl that we did last year. It'll be every day of the Fringe, apart from Mondays and Tuesdays, because I'm getting old now, as I keep saying. And we're also then going, so we'll have a bunch of people with us who are at the Fringe. So if you've got a new piece of writing, then send it in, and at the end of each show, of each literary pub crawl, we'll read out a 5-minute segment of your new writing, and then suggest that the people who are obviously keen on writing, because they're on the literary pub crawl, go and see you. So a bit of free promotion. So if you are going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe, or if you know someone that is, and you're a writer, then do drop us a line. You can get me at Nick at bohemianbritain.com. Nick at bohemianbritain.com, Nick at bohemianbritain.com. And I shall get in touch. Maybe 500 words, certainly no more than 5 minutes, but it might give a soupçon to what you're doing. And of course, if you're going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe anyway this year, 2025, come and say hello. We start in the Pleasance Dome. Are we in the Pleasance Dome? I think we're in the Pleasance Dome. And yes, the spirit of Charles Dickens has very kindly already agreed to visit us for the start of the Edinburgh Literary Pub Crawl. And it's a great city. The first ever UNESCO City of Literature, which of course is why its train station's named after a novel, Waverley. Yes, and lots more information as well. We'll be talking about J.K. Rowling, Joe Rowling. Yes, we will. And I'd like to thank as well Sir Ian Rankin, the Rebus creator, who has already been very helpful. He was very helpful to me last year. The Oxford Bar is where a lot of Rebus is set, and where occasionally we might have the odd wet. We don't actually get as far as the Oxford Bar on the literary pub crawl, because that would take quite a while. Although it's, not that far. Of course, Edinburgh's a lovely city because you can walk around it all. But yes, so thank you to Sir Ian Rebus, Sir Ian Rankin. I should be there for all of August, so do get in touch. And as I say, if you're a writer, please let me know. Maybe 500 words, certainly no more than 5 minutes, just a soupçon of what you're performing or what you're doing. It will be read out to the audience every day, and with a recommendation, of course, as to where you're performing. So it might be a bit of free publicity. So Nick, Nick, at bohemianbritain, that's one word, .com. Yeah. Nick at bohemianbritain.com. We're also taking submissions on Edinburgh at mavericktheatre.co.uk, but I don't want to confuse the issue. I'll definitely get the emails if you send them to Nick at bohemianbritain.com. Now, if you're not in Edinburgh, I hope you're going to have a great summer. Blimey, I was talking to someone the other day. I've just got back from America, as you may know. I was in Kansas City. And actually, if you're around Bedford, or if you're going to be around the Camden Fringe this month or next month in August, then do look out for a couple of shows that have come over from the Capitol Theatre Company in Kansas. Good old Bob, lovely Bob, good old boy, who took us to the Kansas City, and he's bought his kind of raison d'etre is taking Kansas to the world and bringing the world to Kansas. So he's going to be at the Bedford Fringe, and he's a great performer as well. He's also going to be playing at the Camden Fringe as well. And the show they brought over, it's called Bloody Bloody Kansas. written by a lovely woman called Heidi. So if you're around, I was hoping to get them on here actually, but for various reasons and jet lag and stuff, we've not been able to do it. I might try and get them on bohemianbritain.com. Perhaps we'll do a video with them. But failing that, do look out for bloody Kansas, at Bedford Fringe, which I think is next week, and also at Camden Fringe for a week or two. They're a good bunch. I saw some pictures of them on social media, and it was all nice to see them again. But right now we're going to talk about two, very different authors. Aldous Huxley, who was born on the 26th of July, 1894. He passed away on the 22nd of November, 1963. An English writer, of course, probably best known for his dystopian novel Brave New World. But he was a smart boy. He also edited the magazine Oxford Poetry. He was also, interestingly, a humanist, a pacifist, and a satirist, You know what I'm trying to say. Blimey, I've had too much to drink. I'm only on the coffee as well. He was also well known for his advocacy, apparently, and consumption of psychedelic drugs. Now, it's not big and it's not clever, but he's an interesting character. And I came across this. I thought this might be of interest, particularly if you are a writer. Aldous Huxley, about how he started writing. Here he is.
I started writing actually very young. I started writing when this thing happened to my eyes. When I was about 16 at school, I had this violent attack of keratitis, which I had to leave school because I became practically blind, and I had to learn Braille and to continue my education with tutors. And during that time I learned to use a typewriter. It was the only way I could write. And then I started to write. I actually wrote a whole novel at that period, which I never subsequently read. And this has disappeared. I rather regret that it has disappeared, because I would be interested to know what it was like now. It was a sort of romantic. No, it wasn't very romantic. It was a sort of rather bitter novel about a young man's relationship with the two different types of women, as I remember it. I discovered that I liked writing, that I had a certain gift for it. And I had, of course, before I went blind, intended to become a doctor. I presume if I had gone on with that, I would have gone into medical research, because I don't think I would have been a very good practicing doctor, but I might have been a fairly good medical researcher.
Are there, in your opinion, any writers who will survive and will be read?
Actually, I think the most exciting people that I read as an undergraduate and just afterwards were French writers. I got sort of my introduction to French literature at that time. I mean, I read Proust when he first came out in 1914, Du Côté de chez Swann. Then I read the French poets then. The Mallarmé made an immense impression upon me, and still does. I'm still very fond of him. And Rimbaud made an immense impression on me then. No one author has had very great influence over me. I mean, I get things out of all reasonably good authors, and even out of some bad authors that I read. I used to get a lot out of Proust. I reread some of it the other day and was rather disappointed. I don't know why. I mean, it didn't seem to me that I read the last volume, Le Temps Retrouvé. It seemed to me curiously remote and unbelievable and unreal. And even the first volume, which I read part of the other day, passages which I thought were very beautiful in the early days, I didn't get very much out of. I don't know why. It's very strange, because it moved me immensely when it first appeared. I must read it again and have another look at it. Well, I think some of Hemingway's stories are very remarkable, the short stories. And I haven't read the more recent books, which I understand are not particularly good. Nor have I read the more recent Faulkners. Well, I liked some of the early books, Soldier's Pay and Light in August and Sanctuary, but I confess I haven't read anything recently. Joyce, it seemed to me, seemed to think that words were omnipotent. I mean, they are not omnipotent. He was a very strange man. I used to see him sometimes in Paris. This extraordinary, what may be called his magic view of words. I mean, it sort of, I shall never forget sitting next to him once at dinner and mentioning to him, which I thought would have given him pleasure, and it did, that I had just been rereading the Odyssey. And his immediate response was, he said, "Now, do you realize what the derivation of Odysseus, the name Odysseus is?" I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, it really comes from the two words Udais, meaning nobody, and Zeus, meaning God. And that Odysseus is really a symbol of creation of man out of nothing." Well, I mean, this is exactly the sort of etymology which would have been made by Albertus Magnus in the 13th century. I mean, which had absolutely no relation, of course, to anything which we would regard as realistic etymology. But this completely satisfied Joyce's mind, and this curious sort of magic approach to words as having some sort of intrinsic value apart from their references was a very characteristic thing in him. Ulysses is obviously a very extraordinary book. I mean, I don't exactly know why he wrote it, because I mean, a great deal of Ulysses seems to me to be taken up with showing the large number of methods in which novels cannot be written. I suppose it's a great book. To me, it remains a little bit too static, the whole character of Bloom. I mean, there are splendid passages. I don't think it's a success as a whole.
Fascinating stuff, isn't it? We're talking from Aldous Huxley, the writer, of course, English writer, born 26th of July, 1894. He died 22nd of November in 1963, and we're going to hear some more from him, what he thinks about D.H. Lawrence and his relationship with him, and also what he thinks about the world. And I should say it does contain a few adult themes, so just a tiny little warning here. Although we're talking about a great writer's mind, I quite like some of his quotes, Aldous Huxley quotes. He was saying, "The propagandist's purpose is to make one set of people forget that certain other sets of people are human." That's kind of very interesting, isn't it, at the moment? Another great quote I like here: "Every man's memory is his private literature." That's good. He also wrote, "The proper study of mankind is books." And another quote: "A bad book is as much of a labour to write as a good one. It comes as sincerely from the author's soul." And a final quote, well, a couple of quotes actually: "Happiness is not achieved by the conscious pursuit of happiness. It is generally the byproduct of other activities." Ain't that the truth? And finally, "Experience is not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you." Fascinating stuff, Aldous Huxley. I'm Nick Hennegan. This is Resonance 104.4 FM. We're delving into the mind and genius of writer Aldous Huxley. And here he is talking about, again, his experiences in life. As I say, it does contain a few adult themes, nothing too naughty, but, adult themes. He's talking about life and philosophy. And he starts off talking about memories of his friend, the great writer D.H. Lawrence.
I met Lawrence during the war, and of course I knew him best later on in the last 4 years of his life, from 26 to 30. He was perfectly extraordinary as a human being. He was extremely fascinating, and he was always stimulating, a little alarming to be with. I mean, because he was very fond of my first wife, and we got on very well, and I think we were among the relatively few people with whom he didn't, one time or another, have a quarrel. And we saw, as I say, a great deal of him in the last 4 years of his life.
Why was he always quarrelling?
Well, he was a prickly man, and I don't know. I mean, he somehow did it on principle, I feel. No, I don't know, perhaps that's wrong. I don't know what he... It was a very strange thing. He would sort of burst out in this curious way against people. But it was always a pleasure to be with him and to hear his comments on things, his reactions to nature and so on were always very, very fascinating. I mean, he was very charming generally. I mean, he would sometimes sort of get cross, but he could be very amusing and entertaining. And he was happy. I mean, he was happy sort of sitting on a stone and I mean, very like, remember that poem of Wordsworth, Expostulation and Reply, sitting on an old grey stone, as he says. And of course, a lot of his life was spent in this way. And then he would get an urge to write, and then write for 18 hours a day. I mean, it was very extraordinary to see him at work. It was a sort of possession. He would rush on at this, his hand moving at a tremendous rate, and never correct anything, because if he was dissatisfied, he would start again from the beginning. His capacity for perception I mean, it was a great pleasure and instruction, really, to go for a walk with Lawrence. I mean, the sort of way he perceived the world was so intense and exciting. The point is that you must have both. I mean, the blood and the flesh are there, and in certain respects they are wiser than the intellect. I mean, if we interfere with the blood and the flesh with our conscious mind, we get psychosomatic troubles. But on the other hand, we have to do a lot of things with the conscious mind. Why can't we do both? I mean, we have to do both. This is the whole art of life, of making the best of all the worlds. And here again is one of these fatal examples of trying to make everything conform to the standards of only one world, which is perfectly, seeing that we are amphibians, it's no good. These were perverse sides of him, there's no doubt about it. But and I think he would have sort of gradually emerged from this curiously one-sided view of life and attempt to make all life conform to one kind of a pattern. I feel now that, obviously the sensual side of man is of immense importance, but again, this is the question of making the best of both worlds. This is the problem is, how do we get it, reconcile it with consciousness? How do we become fully aware of it? How do we integrate it into our lives? I mean, this is the important problem. And of course, it's interesting to see what has been done historically in this field to achieve precisely this. I mean, this is the interest, for example, of such things as Tantra in India and Tibet. I mean, this is an attempt to find means whereby the spirituality, quotes, can be expressed and discovered in terms of the ordinary processes of life, including the sensual processes. I mean, this to me is the supreme doctrine now. I mean, the whole Mahayana approach of the summing up of the doctrine which says that nirvana and samsara are one, the world of liberation and the world of appearances are identical, provided you can find eternity within time. I mean, people like Blake knew all about this, and were attempting to do it, and this it seems to me is the essence of the art of life, that discovering these methods of finding, so to say, the absolute in the relative, the timeless in the temporal, the spiritual within the world of sense and matter. And I don't think it's impossible. I mean, I think that this is the whole art of living, which again, this is part of this thing which I feel to be supremely important, of making the best of both worlds, of finding out how to harmonize these disparate elements in the human being. And of course, if you had marriage as an institution and this other thing breaking in and smashing the institution, well then obviously you got into trouble. When passion was completely divorced from marriage and broke up marriage, well then necessarily it seemed a kind of diabolic possession almost. I mean, passion seemed, for all the Greeks spoke about it, I mean, arte in Homer, meaning the state of mind which leads to disaster. In the tragedians, it just means disaster, but in Homer it means the state of mind leading to disaster. And Arte was a daughter of Zeus, whom Zeus, for his own strange and practical joke-like purposes, used to let loose on people. I mean, Arte was the person who blinded Agamemnon into stealing Achilles' girl from him. And when they reconcile, he apologizes and says, "But it wasn't I who did it, it was Arte who did it." And Achilles says, "Yes, of course it was. Arte is really very serious." And if you had this idea, I mean, the sexual passion was just one of the manifestations which this mischievous daughter of Zeus who could possess you, one of the ones that she imposed upon human beings. They can now blame it, fortunately, on their complexes and the mothers having not weaned them properly or something of the kind. I mean, in fact, it is now the conception of the unconscious, isn't it, that we use instead. But we don't use, you see, what the Freudians don't use is the counterpart in Greek, in Homeric literature, which is menos, which is the divine capacity to do the impossible. You're suddenly filled with this sort of inspiration. I mean, even horses get it sometimes. I mean, a horse gets so much menos that he can gallop along at a terrific rate. And you get it in fighting, you get it in talking with people, and it is perfectly true. I mean, these uprushes of greater, more than normal, almost supernatural powers and capacities which are a fact of experienced life. I think these two conceptions are very interesting, and of course, until you have a clear conception of the unconscious, both on its negative and its positive side, you must have resort to these ideas of supernatural possessions. No, I mean, I think there's a possibility of sexual relations not involving powerful love, but involving sort of friendliness and playfulness. I mean, I think there are many stages of sexual relations which are also quite valuable interpersonal relations, although they may not be of the supremely satisfying quality. But obviously the relationship merely of a man who goes into a brothel and takes the first prostitute is a highly unsatisfactory relation. I mean, but it's possible to imagine relationships short of the highest a great deal more satisfactory than that. I mean, of a kind of many kinds of of relationships which do involve some degree of personal involvement.
Fascinating stuff from the mind of Aldous Huxley, or should I say Aldous Leonard Huxley, who was born the 26th of July 1894. He was born in Godalming in Surrey, the third son of the writer of The Schoolmaster, Leonard Huxley, who edited a magazine called the Cornhill magazine. So his background was fairly cool. As a child, Huxley's nickname, I should say, was Oggy, diminutive for ogre, apparently. He also taught. He went to Balliol College in Oxford. But being financially indebted to his father, he decided to get a job. So he taught French for a year at Eton College, where none other than Eric Blair, who was, of course, later to take the pen name George Orwell, Yes, was one of his pupils. He was mainly remembered as being an incompetent schoolmaster, and he wasn't very good at keeping order in class. But nevertheless, Blair, George Orwell, and others spoke highly of his excellent command of language. So, an interesting, fascinating character, and I hope you've enjoyed that kind of look into his life. We were going to talk about Peter Rabbit, but we'll have to do that another time. And don't forget, if you are at the Edinburgh Fringe this year, then do drop me a quick line. We've got daily slots, daily 5-minute slots, where you can send us your new writing and we'll read it out at the end of the Edinburgh, not London, literary pub crawl. We end up in Grassmarket, a lovely pub, but I'll tell you more about that over the next few weeks, I guess. And if you have got some new writing, about 500 words, 5 minutes max, then do drop me a line, send me a copy of it, and also, of course, where you're performing, and a bit of information about you and the show, to Nick, N-I-C-K, at bohemianbritain.com. Nick at bohemianbritain.com. And likewise, if there's anything else happening in the world of literature or London, or anywhere really, America, anywhere, lad, lass, and other, then do, again, get in touch. You can still get me on radio@mavericktheatre.co.uk, radio@mavericktheatre.co.uk. But that's it for this series. We're back in September on Resonance. I'm going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe, as I've obviously already mentioned, for the whole month of August. So it'd be lovely to see you if you look up the George, what have we got? Yes, the Charles Dickens, I think we're called the Charles Dickens Edinburgh Literary Pub Crawl. We're at the Pleasance with Pleasance. That will start at the Pleasance Dome every day at 3:00. Be nice to see you. And whatever else you're doing, have a fantastic summer. And do check out bohemianbritain.com, because I shall be on there at least every week through August, and possibly more often. But thank you very much for your company. I hope you enjoyed that insight into the mind of Aldous Huxley. And have a great summer. Always feels weird saying that, doesn't it? Yeah, have a great summer. I love you all. Oh, and Kath in California sent me an email. She's still listening on the beach in California. I didn't get quite that far, but Kansas City, if you're in Kansas City, MO, then you have a nice summer as well. I'll see you in September. But as I say, pop along to bohemianbritain.com, because I'm going to be there a lot between now and then. But for now, that's it. This is the final show of Literary London until September. I'm Nick Hennegan, and this, of course, is London's art station, Resonance 104.4 FM.